All right, I now call this meeting of the Kansas State University Student Senate to order. Will you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? We will now move into roll call.
Adams. Armstrong. Arnoldi. Belk. Bergston.
Here.
Bothwell.
Here.
Bowen.
Here.
Brown.
Here.
Carpenter. Cole.
Here.
D. Moranville.
Here.
Dunfield.
Here.
Esses. Gammon. Gillian King.
Here.
Grover. Hammond.
Here.
Harp. Heatherman.
Here.
Alec Hildreth.
Here.
Derek Hildreth.
Here.
Huffman.
Here.
Javin.
Here.
Karamali.
Here.
Kidd.
Here.
King.
Here.
Kulkarni.
Here.
Leverett.
Here.
Mari.
Here.
Marshall.
Here.
Morgan. Neatery.
Here.
Orth. Orzakowski.
Here.
Pelton.
Here.
Penny.
Here.
Riffle.
Here.
Roman.
Here.
Smith.
Here.
Spellman.
Here.
Spencer.
Here.
Sullivan. Tile. Thompson.
Here.
Chumlin.
Here.
Wessel. Wilhelm. And Whitmer.
Here.
Okay, we'll move into directors real quick. Boyd. Clark. Cruz.
Here.
Gertzen. Jennings. Pick. Lundeen. McIntosh. McKenzie. Minu. Picer. Sedlacek.
Here.
Tuttle.
Here.
Underwood. Valdez. And Works. All right, we have 35 senators present, 0 excused, and 14 absent.
All right, we will now move into first open period. Our first open period speaker this evening is Senator Jonathan Cole, Results Real Change Fellow.
Okay, cool.
It's on. Okay, cool. So I know some of you asked like what I was doing in DC while I was in DC. So I thought I would just present to you guys the awesome opportunity that I had to that I got to take advantage of. The sounds are really loud, so we're gonna move it away. Okay, cool. Step back. Okay. So if you want to go to the next slide. So if you wondered what Results is a movement of passionate and committed everyday people together. They use their voices to influence political decisions that will bring an end to poverty. So I was in DC lobbying members of Congress to pass certain policies to bring about an end to poverty. It was really cool. I got to meet people like Representative John Lewis, Representative Steve Watkins, who represents Kansas 2nd, things like that. So yeah, we even get to meet people like Jerry Moran because he's in Manhattan all the time. And it's really cool to actually meet these policy makers because it shows that they're human and that they're super accessible and not these just figures that hang out in Washington. So, but yeah, we're going to talk about what Results does, like the strategies that they use. If you want to go to the next slide. So Results is a nonpartisan organization, so we work across aisles. You do all sorts of different tactics. The big ones that we typically do are engaging our policymakers at town halls or writing letters to the editor. And so this kind of shows what's the most effective way of doing that. And this is from the Congressional Management Foundation, where they surveyed chiefs of staff, legislative aides, things like that, to figure out what was the most influence decision makers the most. So in-person visits from constituents actually had the most influence. And at the very bottom, the second from the bottom is lobby visits. So we technically have more power and influence than lobbyists in DC if we do it right. So if you want to go to the next slide. And so it's really important that we start reaching out to our members of Congress right now because it's a new congressional session. And they kind of set the agenda the first 100 days. And so if you start reaching out now and you say, this is what I'd like to see, it's really influential for the next 2 years. So yeah. So this is kind of how Results does a lot of their anti-poverty advocacy. Everyone wants to, we come from the fact that everyone deserves healthcare, education, and economic opportunity. Congress decides where your money goes to appropriations, and so they take all the tax levies that happen throughout at the federal level and decide where that goes. So we actually have roughly a $4 trillion budget that Congress manages. So you get to tell them where that goes through decisions like this. And so going into our congressional asks, that's me with John Lewis. It was super cool to meet him. Going to the next slide. So what we were focusing on this time was increasing funding to rental housing for low-income families with any budget deal, shifting the housing policy to reduce the racial wealth gap, and supporting strong U.S. leadership for the Global Fund to fight AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria. I know earlier in the fall you heard me talk a lot about SNAP and public charge against immigration. That was also part of Results too. So we're going to talk about housing first. This just kind of talks about how housing is tied to all sorts of different things. It ties especially to things like health, civil rights, education, and then sort of more to mobility, criminal justice, and economic productivity. So if you think about housing, it's tied to like all sorts of different things. It's pretty important. If you want to go to the next slide. So the affordable housing crisis, nowhere in the United States can you afford a 2-bedroom apartment on minimum wage working full-time. And so typically you'll have families that have children that want to have extra space for like their child to sleep in and things like that. No one can afford it working full-time in the United States. This graphic actually focuses on the availability of rental homes per every 100 extremely low-income renters by the state. Kansas has 45 low-income homes per every 100. So we're not the worst, but we're also not the best. So yeah, so going on to the next slide. This also talks about how housing policy has also been racially discriminatory in the past through things like the New Deal, the GI Bill, all sorts of things like that. And so this has actually helped create a racial wealth divide. Owning a home is like the best way to build wealth, and unfortunately through federal legislation, it's actually it's caused a huge racial wealth divide. If you want to go to the next slide. And so there's a need for rental assistance. Unfortunately, 3 out of 4 low-income at-risk renters do not receive federal assistance. So if you're lucky enough to get it, you're roughly only 25%. Families with children, only 78% of them do not receive federal rental assistance. Elderly without children, 66. Disabled without children, 56. And other households are 92. So those are extremely low-income housing or extremely low-income groups that do not receive rental assistance that's critical to getting them out of the cycle of poverty. If you want to go to the next slide. This also shows how these housing choice vouchers are extremely successful with moving people above the poverty line. Just shows how like you can move children out of the poverty line as well as all ages, things like that. Another thing with housing choice vouchers, so you might get the housing choice voucher. You could be part of the 25% that gets them. And unfortunately, 2/3 of where those housing choice vouchers are distributed, you can be discriminated on the basis of income by using that. So a landlord can tell you, no, I do not want to rent to you because you're using a housing choice voucher, which makes it hard to get economic mobility and opportunities for everyone, which is unfortunate. And so that also adds to the racial wealth divide too, because there is some racial stigma with that, unfortunately, as well. So talking about the Global Fund to fight AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria. The Global Fund is this international group that focuses on providing necessary foreign aid to countries that do struggle with these diseases. And so it's the United States partners with a bunch of other countries to fund this fund. If you want to go to the next slide. So tuberculosis actually is the leading cause of death from infectious disease. It kills more than malaria and AIDS combined. Over 10 million people become sick with tuberculosis every year, but only 4 million are missed by the healthcare system every single year. And that's 4 million people that we're missing because of the plateau that the Global Fund has had because we haven't had any increase in funding. So this just kind of shows how, like the normal strain of TB, how there's a gap of roughly 4 million between the reported new and relapsed TB cases and the estimated number of actual TB cases. If you want to go to the next slide. And this talks about drug-resistant tuberculosis and how there's an even bigger gap there. And so that's even harder to treat and why we need to fund the Global Fund. And so HIV/AIDS, that has declined over 51% over the past few years, which is great because that used to be a huge epidemic in the United States itself. It's still, unfortunately, a big problem in continents like Africa, unfortunately. So, but this shows how the Global Fund's impact, or this doesn't show the Global Fund's impact. This shows just kind of general trends with HIV/AIDS infections. If you want to go to the next slide. And so how many of you remember the last time you got bit by a mosquito? Did you have to worry about it? No, because fortunately, you live in the United States where malaria isn't really a thing. And so there was actually an increase in malaria cases in 2017. That's because the Global Fund hasn't had an increase in funding in a while, and that's what we're asking Congress to do. So if you want to go to the next slide. This just kind of shows where the increase in malaria has actually happened. Fortunately, it's actually decreased in places like Southeast Asia and Ethiopia, so that's great. And this just kind of shows the impact of the Global Fund. We've saved more than 27 million lives since 2002. And it just kind of gives you some fun facts about the Global Fund as well.
Time.
Time for the speakers expires. Is there a motion to extend? Senator King.
I move that we extend the speaker's time by 5 minutes.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we extend the speaker's time by 5 minutes. If there are no objections, you have 5 more minutes.
So with the Global Fund, we're asking our members of Congress to actually increase funding by $1.56 billion. I mistyped that on there. For fiscal year 2020, Jerry Moran actually sits on the Senate Foreign Operations Committee or Subcommittee on Appropriations, so he actually does play a huge role with that. And the United States has usually been a big leader on global issues like this, and it accounts for less than 1% of the federal budget. If you want to go to the next slide. So just kind of to recap, I didn't give you a number with housing policy. We're asking for an additional $4 billion increase to the Section 8 housing choice voucher program. That will create 340,000 more housing choice vouchers. And what that'll do is just provide economic opportunity to Americans everywhere that need that. And then we're asking for $1.56 billion to the Global Fund as well. If you want to go to the next slide. So if you're wondering how can you get involved with this, easiest way is just to join your local results chapter and just learn about it. And if you feel like you're comfortable enough, you can call your member of Congress and say, hey, I'd really like you to support this. And at the very top, you can apply to be a Real Change Fellow, which is what I do, where I go to Washington, D.C. and actually meet with members of Congress. It's really rewarding. I highly recommend it, and applications are open right now. So if you want to learn how to do all that fun stuff, you absolutely can do that. But yeah, I think that's the last slide. Yeah, do you have any questions?
Are there any questions for our speaker? Intern Galloway.
I really appreciate you coming to talk about this. It seems really cool. So what kind of steps does Results take to lobby government officials? Is there a specific thing that they do, or is it kind of like you kind of go on your own path?
So it's considered lay lobbying, so I'm not like a registered lobbyist. So I will set up meetings with our Kansas delegation, for example. You just call the office or you email the scheduler and you say, hey, I'm going to DC at this time. Can we meet with, for example, Representative Marshall? And they will get you partnered with the right legislative aid to talk about that issue. And then you just meet with them and you talk about it. And Results provides all the training with like how you talk about this in a very effective manner.
Further questions? Senator King?
Yeah, thanks again for coming to talk to us, talk about all this stuff. This sounds really cool. But one of my questions is, how many of you guys go to watch? Like, how many from Results go to watch?
Yeah. So there's about 100 of us in the Real Change program. There's only 3 Kansas people right here right now. There's way more Kansas people that actually go. This just happens to be all the K-State people that went. There's some people that from KU that go, as well as Wichita State. And Kansas is honestly put up on a higher pedestal than the rest of the Results chapters because of people like Garrett Wilkinson, who like did crazy things and got a lot of national attention. And so they tried to bring in more Kansas people because we do have that like notoriety. So if you apply for it, you're pretty likely to get in, I'm not gonna lie.
Are there any more questions for our speaker? All right, if not, thank you for your presentation, John. I do want to take a second to make a quick announcement that during open period, please shut all of your laptops. It's very respectful for all of our speakers if we give them our undivided attention. With that, we will have one more open period speaker, so if you all could shut your laptops, that would be phenomenal. Thank you so much. If that individual is prepared, we are honored tonight to have an SGA legend in our presence, Stephen Kuchra.
So if this were Halloween, I'd probably say surprise or something. I didn't know I was going to speak until about open period, and so I had 2 minutes to scribble some notes. I drove up, and honestly, on the ride up from Bartlesville, Oklahoma, where I live now, I was listening to Dr. Bosco's last lecture speech over at Leadership Studies, and I was also listening to the Michelle Obama book. And so, I don't know, that gets you pretty amped up for an evening after a drive like that. I'll do a few things. I'm going to talk about where I'm at now, and then I'm going to talk about what K-State gave me that I think helped prepare me for the rest of my life, and then also leave you with a few ideas on things that informed my time in student government, and hopefully it might help you too. So I graduated in May, and I moved down to Bartlesville, Oklahoma. And right now I work as a consignment accounting analyst for Phillips 66. So I work in their corporate headquarters. So Bartlesville is a town of about 37,000 people. And so I did an internship with the company in the past and really enjoy the time I spend with them. It's important not only to just do your job, unless your job is what you're truly passionate about. So first do your job, meet your requirements, and then find things that inspire you, that motivate you. So some things that I've tried to do is I've taken on a leadership role in the LGBT employee resource group in the company. And also I'm going around the community trying to understand what resources are available for people of different diverse abilities. I recognized in my company that there is not a diverse abilities group in that company, and so trying to figure out what challenges people are facing. And so that's a way that I've tried to take that sort of advocacy-ship that I learned here. I almost said in the Big 12 room, I'm that old, that I learned here in student government and have tried to take it into the workplace. Also, for anyone who was wondering, I did pass my CPA this last year, and so that's out of the way. So I've been asked a lot since I've left this room, how was your experience at K-State? What did you take away from this? And the answer that I come back to most often is I felt like student government and K-State gave me the opportunities and the resources to go from where I was, because when I arrived here, I could probably count everyone who I knew their name on one hand. To having a career in student government and getting to know a lot of the population here at K-State. I felt like I had the opportunity, that the resources were there. Now you have to go find some of those resources, and that's the mission of student government, I find a lot of times, is to connect those students to those resources so that they can have a successful experience as well. So moving on to 3 items I want to leave with you just to think about and ponder with, because some of you, you're coming to the end of your last term in student government. And for some of you, this is the first one. And we also have elections coming up, and even if you have additional years coming up, there are some people maybe in this room who are running who might not be elected again. So first of all, a title is not everything. So even if you are not elected, I've seen a lot of people who weren't re-elected to terms in this body and have gone on to do amazing things around campus. That doesn't mean you can't run in a year, but figure out what your passion is, and it's not necessary for you to be in student government to make that difference. I really encourage everyone to look around the K-State community and understand what backgrounds you represent, and maybe what are the journeys that other people had to take to come to school at Kansas State University? What are the struggles they have to do? What was their journey if it's someone who's next to you? What was their journey to come to student government? And the more that we understand where we come from, the different advantages we have and the privileges that each of us have, maybe that will inform us, help us have more empathy and better represent those in the K-State family. Second item I want to share is be the first one in and the last one out at a meeting whenever you can, because it's those conversations before and after a meeting where you make the true connections and you learn the things that those who just come for the regular order and the rhythm of the meeting might miss. There is no such thing as a small leadership position. So a lot of times in those before and after times in a meeting, you find those opportunities that will give you a different perspective on student government and student life. One of those opportunities, I think I was just hanging around in the student government office my freshman year, and I got offered to be on the Parking Citations Appeals Committee for 2 years. And so it's not a glamorous job. It was a different branch than I had experience with before, but it was a way that I could help learn the parking rules. And then when people came to me and they were saying things that were not correct according to the parking rules, I was like, you might get in trouble with that, or maybe here's a better way that you can park so that you don't get into trouble. It was those type of opportunities that if you're willing to say yes to the most unattractive, the most unglamorous position that's out there, you can build up with a reputation as the person that people go to when there is an opportunity. And lastly, find people in this body and find people in the campus that you disagree with, that you ardently and adamantly disagree with, because those people will help inform your position. Don't just surround yourself with a lot of yes people and people from your background. Surround people with you that you disagree with, because it informs your position and helps you understand where other people are coming from, and it helps you speak to the other belief systems that are in the population. So those were all my thoughts that I had for today. I'm here for the Valentine's Day weekend, so if any of you want to get a coffee, turn to someone who's next to you, because they probably have my phone number. And I'll be around this weekend if you have any questions. I'd love to take them. If your question is who's going to win on Saturday, of course the obvious answer is go Cats.
All right, to start off with, Stephen, could I maybe have you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are and what you've done during your time at K-State?
The 1 minute, the 5 minute, the 30-minute CV. No, okay.
Maybe 1 to 2.
Yeah. So I came to school in 2012. So I was here at school for 6 years. But in my freshman year, I'm not going to launch into another speech. So got here in 2012, and I got double majors in music performance, main instrument organ, and accounting. And then I went on to get a master's in accounting that I graduated in May. I started in student government my freshman year. I was an intern my first year. I was a senator who wasn't elected in the initial election my first year, but after appointments, I was sworn in about a month into the first term. So I served almost 4 full terms as a student senator. Served on a lot of different committees. I'll spare you that. I was the Speaker Pro Tem for 1 year here in Student Senate, and then I also served as the, and I forget my title for last year. I just call it
Student support.
a Student Support Director, and worked on a lot of different initiatives trying to particularly trying to increase the accessibility of education to students, depending upon what challenges you had to overcome to be here at Kansas State University. And was involved with a lot of other things. And one of the things that I'm most proud of that I did was for almost 6 years, for almost every Friday night, I played the piano at Derby Downing Center on Friday nights. So if you want to catch me, I'll be over there tomorrow night.
All right, are there any other questions for Stephen? Senator Cole.
Can you come back?
Well, I'm here now, and anytime I'm around on a Thursday night, nostalgia will definitely bring me back.
All right, are there any more questions for our speaker? All right, if not, thank you so much for coming tonight, Stephen. All right, are there any more speakers for first open period? Seeing none, we will now move into the approval of the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes? Interim Coordinator Bothwell.
I move that we approve the minutes.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the minutes. If there are no objections, the minutes are approved. We'll now move into announcements, proxies for the week. Bothwell for Arnoldy, and our SGA member of the week this week is State Relations Director Faith Tuttle for all of her work organizing State Higher Education Day in Topeka on Tuesday. All right, we will now move into approval of appointments. Is there a motion to consider Resolution 37? Senator Marshall.
I move we consider resolution 37.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we consider Resolution 37. Will the author please come forward?
So Resolution 18-1937, approval of new student senator by the Senate Operations Committee. Whereas the position of student senator for the College of Veterinary Medicine is vacant, and whereas Madeline Burke has shown interest in this position, be it resolved that Section 1, Madeline Burke be approved as student senator for the College of Veterinary Medicine.
All right, with that, are there any questions or corrections for the author? All right, seeing none, is there a motion on this resolution? Is there a motion to approve this resolution unanimously? Senator Javin?
I move to approve this resolution unanimously. Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve this resolution unanimously. If there are no objections, this resolution is approved unanimously. Madeline, could you please come to the front of the room? You could stand up here. You could raise your right hand. I actually lost my little card, so we're bringing up a laptop. Okay. I'm going to read a statement. At the end, you could say, I do. I do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the office of student senator and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the Kansas State University Student Governing Association.
I do.
Awesome. If you could introduce yourself with your name, major, hometown, and favorite smell.
Favorite smell? Oh gosh. Okay. I was here 2 Senates ago and I heard you guys do that. I think the interns did that. I'm Madeline Burke and I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio. Is anybody in here from Ohio? Probably not. That's how it's been at the vet school too. But I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio, and I got my bachelor's of science in zoology at Miami University in Ohio this past May. So now I'm a first year at the vet school. I'm interested in zoo medicine and exotics and also public health. So I'm looking at a lot of stuff, but I'll be here until 2022. So now I am a wildcat. What were the other things? Favorite smell? I don't know. I guess the smell of brownies baking. I make a lot of brownies to get me through the studying hours. But that's me.
All right. Can we give Madeline a round of applause? All right. With that, we'll now move into committee reports. Are there any committee chairs who would like to give a report? Chair Colburn, Kulkarni. Together? Okay, awesome. Please come.
There's no legislation, I guess. Okay, so I'm Lily Colburn, chair of the special committee on membership, and this is Vedant.
I'm Vedant. I'm the chair for student engagement.
I hope that you all know who we are because we've come up the last few times. But anyway, so what the special committee has been working on the past couple of weeks now is creating changes to the student engagement committee. So Vedant will speak to kind of some of the issues and advantages that he's seen as the current structure of student engagement and his role as chair. And what the special committee has done is kind of look to see how we can take the advantages of the special committee since we have had it for the past 4 years. There's obviously something that we like about it, but we don't want to have essentially another standing committee every single year. So we're looking to ways to make that more efficient and just better functioning in SGA. So I'll leave it to Vedant to kind of introduce this.
Hi. So basically what we saw is that within the bylaws of student engagement, there was not a specific way of promoting SGA or specifically targeting groups where SGA should be promoted. The bylaws basically just said that, hey, go and promote SGA. So we thought maybe it has become a little bit of a redundant bylaw. So we brought in a change along with the special committee and the surveys that they have taken to basically target groups and non-departmental student organizations, so that getting them involved with student government. And Lily, if you would like to.
Yeah, so kind of the reason why we see that just like a broad outreach committee is not as necessary anymore as it was originally is that with the creation of the communications director and the changes to the intern program and also the creation and strengthening of the college caucus system, a lot of the things that student engagement has been doing, Vedant feels, not to put words in your mouth right now, but he said this to me before. Vedant feels like that's being done by a lot of different people, and it would probably be done a lot more effectively if we just trusted each of those different groups to do it on their own and to do it well on their own, rather than having these overlaps. So what we've looked at is the kind of benefits of doing all of that. So what we've come up with, and I guess another important piece of information, is that when you look at other student governing associations and student government systems across the Big 12 and across the state of Kansas, they all have committees that are usually named or something similar, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. So every other KBOR institution, Kansas Board of Regents School, has a Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee of some kind. And so we were kind of like, why doesn't K-State have one of those when there are lots of different issues around campus that we've all experienced and we've all seen that could be addressed in SGA and kind of giving those a home while also continuing to reach out to organizations? So what does that look like? So up here I have like the first, what special committee has done is draft some legislation and changes to the bylaws of student engagement to create the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. What I'm showing you is just the first draft. There are probably still typos in this, to be honest, and at least some commas that shouldn't be there. So looking at the membership of what this committee would look like, and then also the bylaws. So the first thing, we could go to the next one. The important pieces of the membership. So a 13-member committee, because we feel like that's not too big, not too small, and that will include student senators and 2 to 4 students at large. So there's no definite number of senators, because if the committee chair and Senate feels that there needs to be more at-large positions for whatever reason that year, then we can have in total fewer senators, or vice versa. We can have more senators and fewer at-large positions to give that flexibility. Additionally, having two members of the executive branch serve at the committee, and the 2 different directors of those 2 different directors' positions can change year to year. So if the multicultural student affairs director is really passionate about the committee, or the new student services director, or the ARH director, or the international students affairs director, at the discretion of the executive branch and the speaker of the student senate and the chair, or maybe not senate, I don't know what's written in there, the president and the chair, they can figure out which individual is best suited for that position, rather than it being legislated that it has to be these specific 2 directors like it is for student engagement right now. And then finally, as ex officio members, non-voting, we have the speaker pro tempore, the intern coordinators, and the SGA communications directors, since all of the issues have to do a lot with those positions. And then this is probably what you all wanted to be looking at the whole time. Sorry for not talking about this first. Oh, wait. Is there another slide? Ah, this. Okay. These are what the actual bylaws of the committee, so the things that they'll focus on. So first is executing and analyzing the demographic survey that the Special Committee on Membership created 2 years ago now. Currently, the Pro Tem does that, but the Pro Tem has a lot of different responsibilities, and that one is just kind of tacked on there. So this could be a home for for a group of students to really take hold of and execute well and actually look at those results and talk about what we can do to make them look more representative of the student body. And second, performing outreach to university-wide, non-college specific organizations. So currently, college caucuses should and are working on departmental organizations. So we still need a place for university-wide places or organizations. Third, proposing solutions to ongoing systemic issues dealing with disproportionate membership in KSU-SGA, educating Senate on existing organizations, resources, and issues relating to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and finally, evaluating existing and developing further policies to increase participation from the student body in SGA. So to create these bylaws, we looked at the bylaws of the Student Engagement Committee and then also the legislation of the Special Committee, and kind of saw where there were things that could be dropped on each one and things that there was a lot of overlap. So it's like this. So that's all. That's just an overview. So we wanted to keep you all informed on the process of what the Special Committee is working on, inviting you to the meetings. We meet every Sunday at 6 p.m. in CSI conference room. I'd love to see you all there. We have some big committee meetings with like 20 people there, but I love that, and I would love to see more. If Sundays don't work or you don't want to come to a committee with 20 members because it gets a little hectic, email me, reach out to me. I would love to meet with anyone individually in small groups. I can just sit in CSI and talk about this all day. So I want to hear feedback. Love to hear feedback right now, and if you want more extended time, approach me. My email is Lily Colburn, LILYCOLBURN. Yeah, that's all.
All right, with that, are there any questions or I guess input for our speakers? Intern Booz.
Are you envisioning this committee as kind of as leading outreach or as cooperating with other branches on outreach or something similar?
Yeah, I think leading and cooperating. So I think cooperating in that the reason why we put the Pro Tem as an ex officio member of the committee is because the Pro Tem oversees the college caucus systems. So I think that it is important for college caucuses to lead departmental outreach or departmental organization outreach, but I think this committee should lead university-wide organization outreach, and then the communications director can help facilitate that. So it's a both.
Further questions? Caucus Leader Heatherman.
And losing the DSO and university-wide college-specific outreach from the Student Engagement Committee, how do you envision we make sure that role is not lost if not all caucuses currently have that?
Do you want to? Yeah. So when it comes to DSO, we would love if the college caucus leader take this through the Speaker Pro Tempore as a duty or basically a project that they would use to promote SGA within DSOs. This committee will specifically focus on, as the name says, diversity, equity, and inclusion. So going towards non-departmental, smaller organizations with that represent the diversity of K-State campus.
I'll also add that I think that it's important that anything that the diversity, equity, inclusion, or DEI, as I will probably refer to it from now on, anything that the DEI doesn't have, that student engagement does have, I think does need to be legislated out. So even though the college caucus system says, oh, we should reach out, I think it is important that it stays legislated and is in the bylaws or statutes or constitution, wherever that stuff is. So I think that the bill to create the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee would be a very long one to ensure that all of those changes are made in the bylaws so that all of these positions and areas of SGA are held accountable and responsible for those things that we all just kind of say, yeah, they do.
Further questions? All right. Seeing none, are there any more committee chairs who'd like to give a report? All right. If not, we'll now move on to directors' reports. Are there any directors who would like to give a report? Attorney General Moyer.
Hello, everyone. Tribunal is doing an interpretation next week based on the voting on Privy that happened January 31st. The request is made by Student Body President Keel. If you have any relevant information or any strong thoughts or feelings that you think are truly relevant, please email them to me. You can submit a 2-page brief that the tribunal will consider when they make their decision. And then I'm going to go ahead and read off the initial request just so everyone has the context. And it's regarding 508B of the Constitution. Does this section state that a Privy agreement would be the law that provides creation or change, or is it that changes to the student bylaws that change or create Privy would be the law that requires 2/3 majority vote? So I just have to let everyone know because we have to have 5 days pass until we can actually do it. That's all I got.
Attorney General Moore, if you could you share is there like a deadline for when you want us to submit the information?
Wednesday at midnight.
Are there any more questions for our speaker? All right. If not, thank you. Are there any more directors' reports? Director Tuttle.
All right. Go to the next slide. So I just wanted to give you an update on what I've been doing. This gorgeous picture is everyone who went to State Higher Ed Day on Tuesday. We brought 15 K-State students, but it was for everyone in the Kansas border region. So there were students from Fort Hays, Pitt State, Emporia, Washburn, us, and KU. So the topics that we talked about with our legislators were the collective ask, which was $50 million for universities and $25 million for 2-year institutions for fiscal year 20, along with the importance of mental health on campus, and affirmative consent, so basically a yes means yes policy, and textbook affordability with specifically House Bill 2011. In addition, what else I'm doing? Big 12 on the Hill is February 24th through the 28th. So 5 of us are going to be going to DC to advocate on the Hill. And our topics for Big 12, this was decided by all Big 12 institutions and were voted on by all the members that were going. So that is mental health, sexual assault prevention, and the Higher Education Act reauthorization. So that last one basically deals with Pell Grants, loans, TRIO funding, stuff like that. The topics for State Day. So there's 2 days. The first day is Big 12 Day, and we'll talk to different legislators on the Education Committee. State Day is with KU and K-State, and we'll be talking to all of our reps and our senators, so Miranda and Roberts. So our topics for this are OERs, Open Educational Resources. So that's basically, again, textbook affordability, Title IX protections, and again, the Higher Education Act reauthorization, but we decided to really focus on TRIO funding and FAFSA simplicity. And then I just wanted to brag on my advocates. They've been doing amazing this year. And I'm not the only one that thinks so. We've gotten a few shout outs from some legislators, so they've been doing a really good job. 11 of them got to go to State Higher Ed Day, and so that was really exciting. Coming up this year, we're looking at maybe going and doing a Legislative Advocates Day on Topeka on Capitol Hill, or maybe giving some testimony at the education for hearings and stuff like that. So an eventful year, and it's been really good. And with that, I'll stand for questions.
All right, are there any questions for Director Tuttle?
Yeah.
Senator Cole.
Hasn't Moran been supportive of TRIOs funding in the past?
He has been very supportive. He's been one of our best legislators.
Further questions? All right. If not, thank you again, Faye. Are there any more directors who would like to give a report? Director Sidlogic.
Baltimore, Boston, Chicago, Dallas, Denver, Indianapolis, Phoenix, St. Louis, San Antonio, and Wichita. What is something that all these have in common? All these cities have in common. They are all known for their city flag. And yes, you guessed it. The city of Manhattan is announcing a competition contest to design a flag. So yeah, it's crazy, but it's actually really exciting. So if you really want information, here's a lot of the details. I want to take a screenshot. If you know anyone who's into graphic design or anything, or if anyone that loves Manhattan, you can send this information their way. But the website's really easy. It's cityofmhk.com/flag. And you can submit up to 3 designs per individual. But yeah, it's just there's many reasons they're doing it, just to increase civic pride and build community, and it's great, it's awesome, it's really cool.
Also, pull up a photo of what the flag looks like currently.
Yeah.
Just look up Manhattan KS flag.
It's very colorful.
It's the one
Yeah.
right there. To the yeah, wait, yeah.
And you may be thinking that green border and purple on the sides, oh, that's probably just like online. No, that's actually on the flag.
Oh no!
That whole thing is the current Manhattan flag. So if you're in Manhattan, Kansas, and you go to school at K-State, and you're not proud of that flag, you should do something about it, because that is not what we want. So I'll stand for questions.
All right, any questions for the speaker? Chair Spellman.
Will you be submitting a design?
Probably. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, it's exciting. It may not be good, but I'm excited, so yeah.
All right, further questions? Intern Colburn.
Do they ever fly that flag? Yeah, they do.
It's at City Hall, and it's also City Park.
Follow them? Don't they fly the one that says Manhattan?
No.
They fly that one. I can verify. They fly that one.
They used to fly the old one because the little swoosh with the leaf, that's the new logo for the city of Manhattan. For about 3-ish years, I think, maybe 4. Don't quote me on that. But the actual city of Manhattan, that's on the water towers and stuff, is the old logo. That's slowly getting phased out.
All right, further questions for the speaker? Seeing none, further director's reports. Director Lundin.
Sorry. Okay, so Jack Dunfield, myself, and several other students have been working alongside several organizations on campus, such as Student Life, Counseling Services in Lafayette, to work on a mental health dialogue, and we've been working on this since about this last September. And next week there is going to be the dialogue at 6 right before Senate, and we just want to make sure that you all know that it's encouraged to come, and I think it would be a very beneficial event, considering that mental health issues are one of the most pertinent topics on campus right now. And if there are any questions, I will defer them to Jack.
Are there any questions for our speaker? All right, if there's not, I would like to ask a question if I could, Director Lundin. Could you tell us a little bit about the event and what it will entail, and then also when Senate will start? Tomorrow, or next week.
Yeah, so we'll kind of have a few different parts. So we'll start with someone from Counseling Services who will kind of give a brief monologue. Then we'll have a few testimonies, And then Student Life will be putting on a presentation that they've done before for mental health advocacy. And then we'll kind of take a little break, come back and do called Peer Theater, I believe. It's a fun activity that they do that kind of is interactive, so that'll be good. And then after that, we will close with some remarks from Lafine. Jim Parker and James Guest will be here to talk a little bit about that as well.
So what time Senate will start? What time will Senate start?
I believe it was 7:15.
You'll get an email, but Senate will start a little late because of this dialogue, and we really want to encourage all of you to come at 6 p.m. to take part. Anything else to add, Lynn? All right. Further questions? Director Solachik?
This is, I don't know who to direct this to, but is there going to be cabinet next week? Or no?
We'll send out an email.
Awesome. Any more questions? Seeing none, are there any more directors' reports? President Keel.
All right, we have a date for the SGA reunion, May 11th. Put it on your calendars. It'll be that Saturday afternoon/evening. Thank you, Sadie Polson, for volunteering to help us. If anyone else would like to, I would really appreciate it. Send me an email. We'll get you involved. It'll be great. That's all I've got, and I'll stand for questions.
Wow. Any questions for President Keel? I didn't mean like that. Okay. Seeing none, are there any more directors' reports? All right. If not, we will now move into approval of minor allocations. Bill 51 is a travel allocation to the Kansas State University Student Chapter of Mechanical Contractors Association of America. Their request was $500 and they were recommended $500. Are there any questions on the minor allocation? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the minor allocation? Caucus Leader Spencer.
I motion to approve the allocation unanimously.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minor allocation. If there are no objections, the minor allocation is approved. We will now move into introduction of legislation. Is there a motion to consider Bill 52? Senator Marshall.
I move that we consider Bill 52.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we consider Bill 52. Will the author please come forward? Bill 52 is a travel allocation. Just kidding. What are the requests? Carson, can you help me out with the requests and recommendations for those two?
Yeah, which one are you looking at?
We're looking at 52 and 53. Got it. Bill 52 is a travel allocation to backcountry hunters and anglers of K-State. They requested $400 and were recommended $400. Bill 53 is a travel allocation to Miracle Network Dance Marathon. Their request was $200 and they were recommended $200. Are there any questions on the introduction of minor allocations? All right, seeing none, now we will move into introduction of legislation. Is there a motion to consider Resolution 38? Intern Booz.
Move to consider Resolution 38.
It's been moved and seconded to consider Resolution 38. Now will the author please come forward? Senator Brown.
I move the author be allowed to summarize.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to allow the author to summarize. If there are no objections, you may summarize.
I'll still go ahead and go through the whereas clauses, but this is by the Senate Operations Working Group. Whereas Chapter 10 of the Kansas State University Student Governing Association statutes contains the Agricultural Student Council Constitution. Whereas Article 7 of the KSU SGA Constitution outlines the process for amendments to this document, quote, the charters of the college and school councils may be amended by the college or school councils in accordance with their charters, subject to approval by majority vote of the Student Senate selected and qualified. Whereas the Agricultural Student Council met on January 31st, 2019 and made several amendments to their constitution. And whereas Student Senate considers amendments passed by college councils, it may not alter the amendments. So these basically are just changes that they made, primarily updating. Nothing's like big to their big changes to their role that they play in the college. Changing things like language for it previously had like allocating student activity fee money, which is taken out, updating from OSAS to CSI, things like that. I stand for questions.
All right, with that, are there any questions for the author? All right, seeing none, is there a motion to consider Bill 54? Senator Riffle.
I move to consider Bill 54.
It's been moved and seconded. Consider Bill 54. Will the author please come forward? Senator Brown.
I move the author be allowed to summarize. Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the author be allowed to summarize. If there are no objections, you may summarize.
Okay, once again, I'll go through the whereas clauses. Bill 1819-54, decrease of the union program council privilege fee by the privilege fee committee. Whereas Union Program Council, UPC, adds value to the student life experience of Kansas State University through diverse events and programming throughout the year. Whereas in 2017 to 18, UPC put on 189 events with 53,509 attendees at their events, which include students, faculty, staff, and community members. Whereas in 2017 to 18, 61% of UPC events were in collaboration with other campus organizations. Whereas UPC puts on weekly after-hours events that take place on Friday nights, with some exceptions due to fall, winter, and spring breaks, that provide substance-free entertainment for students. Whereas Privilege Fee Committee analyzed the relationships between the number of attendees at events and their respective budgets. Whereas UPC is providing for 8.17% fewer students than at the time of their last contract in 2016. Whereas Privilege Fee Committee encourages UPC to budget their money in a way that prioritizes fulfilling their mission of providing educational, cultural, and social experiences for students over events that are solely giveaways. And whereas the Privilege Fee Committee feels that a decrease of 2% will not inhibit UPC's ability to produce diverse and quality events to the student body. Be it enacted that, so this is a decrease from $211,000 to that final amount of $207,000 or $207,018 for the next 3 fiscal years. A portion of that is specifically allocated to after hours. It's like the $59,000. And I'll stand for questions.
All right, are there any questions for the author? Senator Leverett.
So what are the changes from this bill and the bill?
Yeah, so this bill doesn't specify anything about like prioritizing cutting food. We heard a lot of student concerns about that, specifically in this room, not as much from other UPC members, but we decided to take that out and kind of turn that attention to events that are solely giveaways. We also wanted to highlight in this legislation that some of our privilege fee entities really have such high fixed costs that their funding has to remain stagnant, or not stagnant, but their fixed cost is high, so it doesn't vary as much with enrollment, whereas this doesn't benefit from that same scale, if that makes sense. So we basically pointed out that they're providing for less students in addition.
Can I follow up?
Yes.
Can you kind of speak on behalf of the committee as far as like what made them continue to keep the 2%, even though it was highly debated here?
Yeah, so it was, yes, highly debated here. It was highly debated in committee as well. But ultimately, the people who were in favor of a decrease really stuck to that. We reconsidered both sides. Several of us really went out of our way to hear more students, specifically the students that we represent, and we still felt, a majority of the committee still felt that this was the best path for students.
Intern Glasscock.
What was the vote this time to get this bill out of committee?
It was 7-5.
Further questions? Senator Armstrong.
Can I give my speaking rights to Camila?
Of course.
Hi, I'm Camila from UPC. I just had a couple of concerns about like when privilege fee was going over these things. I'm not sure if like when presenting their arguments and when presenting statistics if they measure for standard
If you could you phrase that as a question for our speaker? Okay, sorry.
So first I want to know, like, did you account for standard deviation whenever you heard the statistics that were given? And then can I ask a follow-up question?
Can I start with
If
that
she could answer
first
that
question?
one, and then you can ask your follow-up question.
I know specifically like what part of that discussion you're talking about, and I cannot speak for the entire committee, but I'll say I really didn't listen to that or factor that in at all. Like, I didn't see the statistics that you're referring to as relevant information in my discussion or my decision.
Okay, and then is Prithvi aware of everything that gets coded under prizes and giveaways? Because through the business office, like we said that food is not going to be targeted, but everything that we hand to a student is a prize and a giveaway. So, like food or like a canvas at an arts event, or like usually it's supposed to be coded under event supplies, but because a student takes it, it's a giveaway. So were you guys aware of what is giveaway?
Yeah, so we had access. You were at the meeting and saw we had access to the full ledger. So while we did, several times reference that like $39,500 amount, we also were able to go through some extent and see groups, like gift card bingo, and like, yes, that's an event and there's other proportions or other components of that. But we could also cross-reference to the union's annual report and find the events that were just like a giveaway event, like tabling in the union and handing out thermoses, like things like that. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you very much for your questions. And I would also say, if you do want to express any debate points, come next week, and that will be the debate on this bill. Are there any more questions for the author? All right. If not, this bill will be referred to the Privilege Fee Committee, and we will move to Bill 55. Is there a motion to consider Bill 55? Senator Marshall.
I move that we consider Bill 55. Second.
It's been moved and second that we consider Bill 55. Will the author please come forward?
All right, so Bill 18-1955, travel allocations to the Asian American Student Union by the Travel Allocation Committee. Whereas the Travel Allocations Committee received and reviewed the travel request of Asian American Student Union, whereas the AASU will be going to the Midwestern Asian American Students Union Spring Conference on May 8th through May 10th, or March 8th through March 10th in Boulder, Colorado. Whereas this conference will give the attendees the tools to open their mind to being more inclusive and open to change, allow them to connect with others that they share both similarities and differences, whereas the event will give AASU the opportunity and connections to create a conference on a smaller scale at Kansas State University that will impact both students who are members of AASU and the campus as a whole, whereas AASU is registered with the Center for Student Involvement as a departmental student organization, and whereas the funds requested by this group and the funding recommendations are made as follows. Midwestern Asian American Students Union Spring Conference, March 8th through 10th, 2019, Boulder, Colorado. They requested $1,000. We recommended $1,000. Be it enacted that Section 1, Asian American Student Union, should be allocated $1,000 for the event described. Section 2, upon passage by the Student Senate and signature of the student body president, these funds will be transferred from the SGA account to the account of the Asian American Student Union.
All right, with that, are there any questions for the author? Seeing none, this bill will be referred to the Travel Allocations Committee. We'll move to Bill 56. Is there a motion to consider Bill 56? Chair Spellman.
I move to consider Bill 56.
It's been moved and seconded to consider Bill 56. Will the author please come forward? I will also entertain a motion to summarize. Senator King.
I move the author be allowed to summarize.
It's been moved and seconded that the author be allowed to summarize. If there are no objections, you may summarize.
All right, cool. So this is a travel location to the Milling Science Club. So they are going to the Ernest N. Memorial Convention Center in New Orleans for their Milling Science National Convention. And so basically they're going to meet with a whole bunch of industry leaders. They're going to get to learn more about like milling science, and they're also going to learn about like leadership and things they can bring back to K-State and apply to their own like department and organization, and basically become a better club as they are now. So they requested $1,000, and we recommended them $1,000.
Are there any questions or corrections for the author? Intern Coordinator Bothwell.
I think it's a correction. I think on line 10 is the word "in" supposed to be at the convention center.
Probably.
Just reads as one long title.
We'll just add like in there. Yeah, I can change that.
All right, further questions or corrections? Seeing none, is there a motion to consider Bill 57? Senator Marshall.
I move to consider Bill 57.
It's been moved and seconded to consider Bill 57. Will the author please come forward? Is there a motion to summarize? Intern Booth.
I move to allow the author to summarize Bill 57.
All right, it's been moved and seconded that the author be allowed to summarize. If there are no objections, you may summarize.
All right, so this is an allocation to the Prairie Fire printmakers. So I don't know if you guys were around the union and you saw people like selling Valentine's cards. They are the people who we're allocating to. But basically, they're a group. They're going to like their national conference where they're going to get to learn more about printmaking, which is honestly kind of cool. And so basically, they're going to get to learn more and learn research in that area and be able to bring it back and become a more efficient club, as well as learn some leadership skills and bring those back to campus. So they requested $1,000, and we recommended them $1,000.
All right, with that, are there any questions or corrections for the author? Seeing none, thank you very much, Carson. We will now move into second open period. Are there any speakers for second open period? Intern Milhan.
Oh, sweet. Thank you. So Kristen had to step up early, so I would like to speak on behalf of Kristen and Elections Committee. So she would like to make two announcements. First about voting tables, and the other one about the Honors House debate. So first, the voting tables for the general election are going to be the 26th and 27th. They're going to meet in the Business Building, Leadership Building, the Engineering Building, Union, Kramer, and Derby. There would be 2 people per shift, 30 minutes each. So you cannot be running, so what she means by this is like you can't be running the table if you're associated with any campaign, either yours or someone else's, and she'll be sending a Google sheet tomorrow about that. And then the Honors House debate is going to be potentially Monday, February 25th, opportunity for all positions to present. Unsure on the format yet. Honors President suggested options of formal debate, mixture of poetry slam, but she will be sending information soon. But if you guys have any questions, email her.
Well, I guess no questions. If you do have any questions, maybe direct those to Elections Commissioner Shao. Are there any more speakers for second open period? Speaker Pro Tempore Arnoldi.
All right, so you guys usually see me around here, but my degree is actually in music composition. And so this Sunday is my senior recital in All-Saints Chapel at 3 p.m. So if you want to hear all of my newly composed premiere music this weekend, I'd really appreciate it if all of you guys would come listen to it.
When is it?
It is at 3 o'clock on Sunday at All-Saints Chapel.
Are there any questions for the speaker? All right, seeing none, are there any more speakers for second open period? Senator King.
Hey everybody, just want to reiterate, the Governmental Relations Committee has decided that they want to do a group photo for the yearbook. So I think it would be awesome if any other committees within SGA would want to do a group photo in our yearbook. If you guys are interested in doing that, if you are the chairman or woman of a committee, then you can just reach out to me and we can set that up. Our deadlines for all group photo pictures are by February 28th. So if you want your club or organization to be in the yearbook, just reach out to me by February 28th. Thanks.
Any questions for Senator King? All right, seeing none, further speakers, Intern Coordinator Bothwell.
Yeah, interns, with the mental health dialogue next week, we're going to have to readjust schedule just a little bit. Sadie and I are aware of this, so we're figuring it out right now. Plan on a 5 o'clock intern program meeting, not a 5:45 meeting. 5 o'clock is what we're saying.
Any questions? All right, seeing none, are there any more speakers? Intern Hines.
Yeah, I also have an announcement going off of some of those. The K-State Rodeo is this weekend, so if you have something or nothing to do this weekend, and with the weather that's coming in, come on over to weather. We have 4 performances. We have one Friday night, Saturday afternoon, Saturday night and Sunday afternoon. You can go look on Facebook for the exact times. Now it's too late for pre-sale, but it should be $15 at the door. So,
What's the Facebook page?
it's K-State. It's long. Just search K-State Radio on Facebook. You can find it or find me. Thank you.
All right, further speakers? Caucus Leader Kidd.
Cool, thank you. So really fast, just want to say that my coach fell. Sorry. Part of my role with the Alumni Association is coordinating homecoming for the entire university, and so we're now taking applications for the committee. So if you have any interest or passion for wanting to work with our programming, or if you hate how homecoming has been organized the past few years and want to have an impact in making this year better, I encourage you to apply. So applications are open to any current students and graduate students. Just go to bit.ly/HC19. Again, that's bit.ly/H as in hello, C as in cats, and 19 as in the number 1 and 9. So after due next Friday by 11:59 p.m. Central, and let me know your questions.
Any questions for Caucus Leader Kidd? Intern Beasley.
Is there like caps on the H or the C?
Oh, right, sorry. Yes, and I guess that does matter with Bitly. So yes, both the H in homecoming and C in cats committee, they're both capitalized. So capital H, capital C, 19. Sorry. Intern
It will be in the minutes as well. Also, I love your blazer.
Thank you.
Any more speakers for second open period? Caucus Leader Heatherman.
Hi, this is no different than the last several weeks now, but if you have any concerns about UPC, I really implore all of you to reach out to people who you know are on like both sides of that discussion and get feedback from them, really hear their viewpoint. If you're going to be like upset with a decision, however that could go, and that's going to like affect your attitude being in this room, it's really unfair to do that unless you're reading the minutes and having meetings and doing your due diligence to be informed. Thanks.
What time are those meetings at?
5:30 on Monday.
And where?
In CSI conference room. And Madison writes great minutes. Read them. They're like, never mind, I'm not going to say how long.
Senator Brown, how do we get to the minutes?
The minutes are on OrgSync. So if you go to OrgSync, files, then there's all the different committees, and then you can go to privilege fee, and then they're going to be numbered. This is probably going to be the UPC debate start around number 14, or maybe 13, and then it'll go to number 16.
Thank you so much. Further speakers or questions?
I was just going to add
Please.
that if you come to a meeting at 5:30 on Monday, we're not discussing UPC. Like in the future, we're now working on budget for the union. So if you're interested in that, it'd be awesome if you come, but don't expect like a bunch of UPC debate because that's like we're moving on from that.
The UPC bill needs to be referred to the Privilege Fee Committee. Is that debate going to happen on Monday at 5:30?
We've already discussed and sent out our.
We'll still have reference.
It needs to be referred, yeah. So that will be.
We'll still talk about it, but it won't be like the whole meeting because we'll still have representatives from the union there to ask questions.
Okay. For questions?
Yeah.
Please, Senator Kidd.
And which I really don't know. Are the meetings that take place in the CSI conference room, are they like live streamed, or is that like a capability that's a thing? So if people can't physically be there, they can still like tune in from the comfortability of their phone screen or laptop. And you can defer that question to someone who can answer it.
Well, I had meetings in the CSI conference room that happened, so we can I can talk to Jansen and we can set that up, and we'll send out an announcement.
All right. Further questions? All right. Seeing none, are there any more speakers for second open period? Director Tuttle.
Yes, Sue Peterson asked me to announce she is having a legislative review session tomorrow at noon in the conference room.
Any questions? If not, are there any more speakers? All right, seeing none, we will now move into reference of legislation. Bills 52, 53, 55, 56, 57 will all be referred to the Travel Allocations Committee. Resolution 38 will be referred to the Senate Operations Committee, and Bill 54, as we've previously stated, will be referred to the Privilege Fee Committee. So if you're interested in that conversation, please, 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 Monday at 5:30 in the CSI conference room, and we will try to live stream that. Now we move into second roll call.
Adams. Armstrong.
Here.
Arnaldi.
Here.
Belk. Bergston.
Here.
Bothwell.
Here.
Bowen.
Here.
Brown.
Here.
Burke.
Here.
Carpenter. Cole.
Here.
DeMoranville.
Here.
Dunfield.
Here.
Esses. Gammon. Gillian King.
Here.
Grover. Hammond.
Here.
Harp. Heatherman.
Here.
Alec Hildreth. Derek Hildreth.
Here.
Huffman.
Here.
Javin.
Here.
Carmali. Kidd.
Here.
King.
Here.
Kulkarni.
Here.
Leverett.
Yeah.
Mari.
Here.
Marshall.
Here.
Morgan.
Here.
Neatery.
Here.
Orth.
Here.
Orzakowski.
Here.
Pelton.
Here.
Penny. Riffle. Roman.
Here.
Smith.
Here.
Spellman.
Here.
Spencer.
Here.
Sullivan. Tile. Thompson.
Here.
Chumlin.
Here.
Wessel. Wilhelm. And Whitmer.
Sorry, I was distracted.
I'll get you down. All right, we have 35 senators present, 0 excused, and 14 absent.
All right. Whoever's going to make the motion to adjourn, please remember that Senate will be postponed until around 7:15 or 7:30. Is there a motion to adjourn? Intern Glasscock.
I move that we adjourn this meeting until next week, same place, same time plus 15 minutes.
Maybe 30.
Maybe 30. Same place.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded that we adjourn. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.